I'm Trish.
And I'm Brandi.
And you're listening to episode 20 of
Connected Conversations. This is your space for real talk about international education, the good, the complicated, and the things teachers usually only whisper about in staff rooms or in WhatsApp chat.
In our last episode, we unpacked why behavior in international schools is so often misunderstood, how culture, mobility, privilege, and emotional load all get collapsed into one word, behavior.
In today's episode, we're zooming out away from individual classrooms and into the systems that are supposed to support behavior, school policies.
Because if you've ever thought, we have a behavior policy, but I don't actually know where it lives or who owns it or how it might help me, then this episode is for you.
Or if you've ever wondered, why does our school have a reputation for behavior issues when the kids themselves aren't that different? Stay with us.
This is part 2 of our 5-part series on student behavior in international schools. And today we're firmly in episode 2 of International Files territory. Systems, patterns, and why school policies succeed or quietly fail.
This episode is all about why policies matter.
And how they're written, how they're shared, taught, and backed, and how that matters even more.
Are you ready? It's time to
get connected. Let's start with a surprisingly basic question that many teachers can't answer clearly. Where is your school's behavior policy?
Oh, it's a good one. In well-run international schools, behavior expectations usually live in multiple places. On the school website, in the parent-student handbook, as part of a student code of conduct, where often students are asked to sign at the start of each year, and sometimes in the classroom charters, posters, or student planners.
That's a lot of places. And accreditation bodies like BSO, Cognia, CIS, they actually expect this when they come. Policies should be visible and accessible. Yet another reason why the accreditation a school has, is so important. And we discussed these in episode 6, 7, and 8. And accreditation can really lend credibility to the systems and structures that your school has in place.
Definitely. But here's the disconnect that teachers talk about online all the time. The policy technically exists, but it's not a lived part of the daily school life.
And this part is vital. When teachers have not been trained on the school's behavior expectations, or students have not been explicitly taught them or revisited them each year, then, or maybe even parents only read the policy once there's a problem, then that policy is not doing its job.
No, in this case, the behavior policy simply becomes a compliance document. Not a behavior system that runs through the school and adds to its kindness culture and community well-being.
And these are big deals in international schools where assumptions about policy or behavior policy vary so widely. Make sure to listen to our previous episode to really unpack why there are these differences in behavior.
A behavior policy that isn't visible, repeated, and translated into student-friendly language isn't actually doing any behavioral work. And you'll see the issues arise when students, staff, and parents are unclear on what is expected as this community's norm.
This is where access and shared understanding becomes protective. When all stakeholders know where the policy lives and how they can easily access it and they're regularly reminded of it, this policy becomes a safety net rather than a surprise.
Definitely. It gives everyone something concrete to refer to when issues arise, instead of relying on personal opinion, emotional reactions, or assumptions in the heat of the moment.
For staff, this is especially important. Clear access to a shared policy helps teachers align their responses with the school expectations rather than defaulting to what they personally believe is right.
Exactly. And in international schools, that matters deeply. Educators come from a wide range of cultural and professional backgrounds. What felt appropriate in one system might not align with the expectations of this new community at all.
A visible and consistently reinforced policy helps teachers detach from those assumptions they hold. It reduces the risk of inconsistent responses and protects teachers from feeling exposed or unsupported when a challenging situation arises.
And parents benefit from this clarity too. When expectations are known ahead of time, many conflicts never even ignite. A parent might disagree with the consequence, but if they understand that the school consistently applies it, for example, it could be a 5-minute recess reflection for aggressive language, the conversation changes.
It becomes less about personal disagreement and more about shared expectations. Even when parents do not agree, a clearly communicated policy can put out a fire before it escalates.
Right. And for leaders, knowing exactly where policies exist and ensuring they are consistently referenced allows continuity. It supports staff through pop-up issues and helps leaders remain supportive, firm, and consistent when parent concerns do arise.
Easy access to policies allows leaderships to back teachers with confidence rather than improvising under pressure. It also prevents mixed messaging that quietly erodes trust across the school community.
When behavior policies are visible, accessible, and revisited regularly, everyone knows the framework they are working within. Students, staff, parents, and leaders are all operating from the same understanding.
So let's talk about the policies themselves and what they often include. Most behavior policies include a student code of conduct, or at least they should in some way. Recently, I've seen some schools even level this up to be a community code of conduct, which is kind of cool. It includes the staff expectations as well.
That's a really interesting approach. I mean, what's fair for students to abide by and often should apply, or it often should apply to how we want the staff to behave as well as community members, not just the students.
Exactly. We're all in this together.
Exactly.
You'll note strong international schools separate three things in their policy pretty clearly. Okay, first, you have the behavior philosophy. Like, what kind of community is it that we're building? Then you have the code of conduct. What does this look like day to day? And now you have this consequences for stepping out of those community expectations.
Now, there's an approach we see in some schools where students are largely placed in charge of defining the expectations themselves, under the assumption that more involvement in creating the rules will automatically lead to more buy-in and stronger fidelity.
But while student voice is incredibly important, I agree with this. This kind of system is not really realistic in practice, fully, at least in the international settings. When expectations are overly student-driven without strong adult framework behind them, it can actually create inconsistencies across different classrooms and across different year groups.
Yeah, because schools are not small, isolated communities. They are complex systems. And without clearly defined adult-held expectations, what is considered acceptable behavior can shift depending on the class, the teacher, or the moment.
And successful schools, don't just publish the code or focus on the punitive aspect of the policy. They teach it with respect and empathy, and teach how respect and empathy are important to upholding the values we've set in our community.
These schools, they teach behavior like curriculum, as in they model it, they practice it, they role play it, they revisit it after transitions, and of course, they gently correct and remind on a consistent basis until all these routines become habit.
This is especially critical in schools with constant student turnover or changing demographics.
Because here's the truth, teachers often feel but don't say out loud, you can't expect buy-in to a system that students and staff were never taught.
It's so true. Some schools that struggle tend to assume students should already know this, or we covered that in the beginning of the year. But then they forget that 3 new students have joined the class since then.
But this people should already know mentality, it depends entirely on culture. It also depends on their previous schools and home expectations, both for staff and students in an organization.
Teachers generally understand the importance of explicitly taught routines and expectations inside their own classrooms. That is not a new way of thinking for most educators.
Right. But what matters even more is whether those same routines and expectations are being taught explicitly, if they are discussed, and if they are revisited at a school-wide level.
A school's behavior culture is directly connected to how often and how clearly expectations are discussed as a staff.
Right.
Just like with students, one conversation at the beginning of the year is not enough.
School leaders have to model this same practice for adults. Expectations have to be revisited, clarified, and reinforced over time so staff can operate with confidence and consistency.
Research from organizations like the International Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, and the UK's Educational Endowment Foundation consistently show that explicitly taught routines and expectations improve behavior and learning outcomes for all, especially in diverse settings. So this key factor in behavior policy success and a positive school well-being culture cannot be overstated.
It really can't be overstated. It's so true because behavior buy-in doesn't come from rules. It comes from understanding, vigilant correction, and high expectation repetition. We're going to dive deep into this into our Teacher Toolbox episode number 21, so stay tuned.
All right, it's time to transition into one of the most common frustrations teachers describe amongst chat groups and often in staff rooms that I've been in. Like, we'll call those policies that exist but don't yet function. Otherwise, policies in name only.
Yeah, sure. These are policies that technically exist in some dusty archive or somewhere deep in the school server, but they are only applied inconsistently and they don't really guide any real decisions on the ground.
Yeah, these are the operational policies that were once written for compliance or for licensing within a school area, but they aren't referenced consistently, as Brandi said. They don't protect the teachers consistently. They're unpredictable for students, and they're often challenged by parents.
So what fills the gap if your school has a policy but doesn't embed it into the community's shared practice?
Oh, a lovely, scary combination of reactionary behavior-related inconsistencies will result.
So fun.
You'll get a culture of negotiation, the appearance of favoritism or unfair punishment for some students, critical and reactionary parent pressure. Been there.
Yeah, me too. Ultimately, a turning away from addressing student behavior issues out of the fear of complaints.
Yep. And these are the stomach cramping, sometimes toxic places to work because you never know when you're going to be supported as a teacher and then when you won't.
Yeah.
So you let so much more go than you would ever let go in your home context.
Yeah, because teachers in these types of schools often describe student consequences being reversed or overridden after a parent meeting. And this can be really frustrating for us teachers on the front line. We discussed parts of this in our last episode. When parents are seen as paying customers, their opinions can reign supreme in many settings.
Yeah, or a leader may even tell their teachers, just keep things calm, we'll sort this out. And instead of being told to support and uphold expectations.
Right.
Meanwhile, you as a teacher, you never really hear any true resolution to what that behavior issue, what happened.
Yeah. And then over time, this creates what teachers call problem schools.
And here's an important reframe of the problem schools idea. Schools don't or really shouldn't earn that or any other behavior reputation because the children attending, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
It's children who come and go every single year.
Exactly.
Right?
It's the systems. They earn those reputations because the systems are inconsistent, such as unclear escalation of issues. So teachers never know when to step in and when to pass it on to other team members.
Or maybe you have high staff turnover. So common understanding and expectations that we understood now are regularly lost.
And often it's a weak induction and onboarding structure as well. So teachers fall back onto the systems that they previously knew.
And most often it's just leadership inconsistency. So teachers begin to learn one system and strategy only to have the leadership change and then start all over again.
Yep. And if you really look at the root cause of all four of these inconsistent system breakdowns, they really all stem from a lack of communication. The seemingly number one concern across all platforms when saying that a school had a high stress level for teachers.
And once the reputation of inconsistency and lack of effective communication really sets into a school's culture, everyone arrives braced for conflict. The leadership, the teachers, the students, and the parents.
And this often translates into behavior issues and inconsistencies escalating far faster than they need to.
All of which can be credited to expectations and school boundaries simply feeling uncertain to all stakeholders involved.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, Trish and I have both seen schools with extremely rigid behavior systems.
Oh, have we ever? Enter in the countless behavior color charts, the fixed escalation ladders, and the automatic consequences, regardless of context.
These often look really strong on paper, especially to inspectors.
Yeah, but in culturally diverse, highly mobile environments, rigidity can sometimes actually increase conflict.
Because not all behaviors have the same root, as we discussed in the first episode of this mini-series, number 20.
A new international learner into your community struggling with the language, with the transition, or a potential cultural mismatch needs teaching, understanding, and support, not automatic behavior escalation.
And that's not to say that Trish and I don't love those charts, ladders, and responses charts. Heck, we've created many of them in our leadership times.
Many. I love me a color chart, Brandi. And these can definitely increase community clarity. However, teachers in large schools, which often adopt very rigid systems, have expressed that they sometimes feel trapped and are required to follow the chart even when it feels a little wrong in this situation. The fear of breaking the policy can leave some teachers feeling really exposed or at risk.
I've been in this situation personally. I felt wrong dealing out a consequence to a student who had really unique circumstances tied to his misbehavior. And I was seeking advice from a trusted and wise leader I worked with. She encouraged me to take a moment and critically think about, why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we have the systems that we have? Having rules just for rules' sake might not be the right thing to do. Critically thinking about them helps us create a flexible setting where where any student body is supported in their unique way.
And that's why we urged you in an earlier episode to really know the type of teacher you are and take this into consideration when considering your next school move or if you're looking. Are clear, rigid structures and time-tested consequence charts the types of things that you can really get behind and support as a teacher? Then look at schools who discuss this in their interviews and on their job posting. You need to be able to assimilate into the community to lend it your support and community consistency.
Right. However, if you're more fluid and flexible and you thrive on a case-by-case system of understanding, such as my experience in the early years in primary with the responsive classroom teaching models, then a school with this kind of attitude towards behavior climate can really work for you. But you must know the type of system the school has and what you're able to support to avoid a contract of beating your head against a behavior wall that you aren't equipped to support.
For sure. Strong behavior systems aren't just printed on paper. At least they shouldn't be. They don't have to be fixed and rigid. The best are principled, flexible, and fit your local context and community.
They are well communicated. They're discussed in staff meetings and regularly reviewed by the community to allow professional judgment within a shared framework.
Okay, it's time, Brandi. Time to discuss the big mythical elephant in the room. Who is actually in charge of behavior at our school?
Ooh, is it the principal? Is it the safeguarding lead? The pastoral vice principal? I think most confident educators know that student behavior is not the responsibility of one person or even one office.
Oh, that's right. Community behavior is a school-wide shared responsibility. The teachers manage their classrooms. The middle leaders support consistency and upskilling of those teachers. The senior leadership sets the tone and protects the integrity of the system.
But above all, the most successful schools are where everybody knows when to deal with issues themselves, when to escalate issues up to the next stage, how that escalation works, and what support looks like at each level.
In strong schools, responsibility is clear and predictable, not because every behavior is fixed, but because everyone understands the shared principles that guide decisions about when to manage, when to escalate, and how support unfolds at each stage.
And that matters because there are thousands of possible behaviors. If you're a teacher, you know. But no school can write a policy for every scenario out there, and behavior, it's often subjective and contextual.
I'm just laughing at how many unexpected ones
I know
that you can never cover in a policy.
Don't put your boogers on the wall.
Child who puts boogers on the wall must go. Oh my God. What strong schools do instead of agree on a small set of decision, they agree on the decision-making anchors.
Right.
Okay. That's what it is. It's questions like, is learning being disrupted? Is safety at risk? Is this behavior part of a pattern or is this just a one-off today? And has the student already been given clear support to meet the expectations?
Those shared questions create consistency without rigidity. They allow teachers to use professional judgment while still operating within a common framework.
When staff are using the same lenses to make decisions, escalation feels less personal and more procedural. It's not about a teacher giving up control. It's about the system stepping in when certain thresholds are met.
And that is how schools manage complexity without trying to control every behavior. Clarity does not come from longer rule lists. It comes from shared thinking.
In struggling schools, that conversation is missing. And when the expectations are unclear, teachers tend to fall into extremes.
Some teachers send students out for every small disruption, either hoping leadership will reset the situation for them, or segregating a student from their classroom community for long periods of time in order to create an easier space for the class to work within. But ultimately, that's forcing the single misbehaving student to pay the price.
Others do the opposite and keep everything inside the classroom, even when the behavior just continues to keep escalating because they're unsure where the line is or worry about being seen as unable to manage, which usually results in the rest of the class paying the price.
So true. And both responses come from the same place.
Yep.
Unclear school-wide expectations about when enough is enough. Teachers often feel exposed in these moments, especially when leadership steps in late or is only there for optics rather than a part of a shared system.
Remember, a fundamental professional responsibility lies with the teacher, right? It is our role to recognize when learning, safety, or community well-being is being compromised.
But that line cannot be individual or improvised. Leadership must clearly communicate when escalation is expected, what support looks like, and how long a student is removed from a learning space.
Teachers need to know not only when to send a student out, but how long that student is out for, where they go, what that reintegration looks like. When leadership is visible and available, students see adults working together as a team rather than as separate authority figures.
Right. It communicates a much healthier message. Your behavior is always supported and guided by the adults around you. There's no escape route and there's no switching sides.
And when that alignment is missing, students quickly learn where the power actually sits and how to play the system.
They do.
One thing we hear a lot in teacher spaces captures this perfectly. When behavior belongs to everyone, but accountability belongs to no one, the systems fall apart.
Right.
So let's end on this grounded note, because there are international schools that are getting this behavior issue right. And when behavior systems are working really well, they don't feel dramatic or heavy.
For sure. Strong international schools build culturally sensitive and empathetic communities. And you can see that in very practical ways.
Schools with successful behavior systems explicitly teach and reinforce positive behavior norms.
Right.
And when that is working, you don't just see posters on the wall. You hear the same language being used across classrooms, corridors, and in the common spaces.
They align teachers, leadership, and parents early in the induction process and gently remind everyone of those expectations along the way.
And when that alignment is strong, behavior conversations feel less emotional and less surprising. Parents are not hearing expectations for the first time when there's a crisis. Teachers are not improvising their responses either.
Everyone is operating on the same reference or from the same reference point. These schools use predictable and structured systems that are not overly punitive and that allow students space to reflect, repair, and grow from mistakes.
When systems are predictable, consequences feel procedural rather than personal. Students know what happens next. Teachers are not second guessing. And leadership responses reinforce the system instead of rewriting it.
Successful schools revisit expectations constantly. They teach them like curriculum and make their core commitments visible throughout the school.
And when that's happening, behavior does not feel like something that only gets addressed when it goes wrong. It feels embedded in daily routines, transitions, assemblies, and conversations.
Strong schools back teachers publicly. And that does not mean pretending teachers are perfect or never make mistakes. It means that in front of students and parents, the school represents a unified front.
Disagreements, adjustments, or coaching conversations happen behind closed doors, not in hallways, not in front of families, and not in quietly ways that undermine the teacher authority.
When teachers know that they will not be publicly overridden, they are more willing to uphold expectations consistently rather than soften responses out of fear.
And when parents see that leadership handles concerns privately and professionally and in a timely manner, it sends a clear message. This is a system, not a negotiation.
That's a big one. Handling parent conversations privately protects everyone involved. It protects the dignity of the teacher. It keeps the focus on the child rather than personalities. And it prevents students from learning that adult authority can be split or played against itself.
It also allows leadership to listen, reflect, and problem solve without creating confusion or mixed messages within the wider community.
Over time, this builds trust. Teachers feel safe to ask for support. Parents feel heard without being handed control. And students see adults operating as a team rather than competing voices.
Research across OECD and whole school behavior studies point to the same conclusion. Behavior improves when students feel they belong, expectations are clear, and adults respond consistently.
This is what the word well-being looks like in practice.
We're all looking for more of it in our lives, right?
We are.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Effective behavior systems are not about longer rule lists or stricter consequences.
No, they are about clearer systems and a shared understanding of how everyone moves forward together when challenges arise.
So, as we said in episode 1 of this mini-series, behavior in international schools is rarely about kids being difficult. It's rarely about teachers not managing it well.
No, more often it's about systems that haven't caught up to the reality of international life. Cultures colliding, students constantly in transition, and expectations that were never clearly taught or consistently supported.
If this episode made you think, wait, I don't actually know where our behavior policy lives, or I really don't feel supported by the school and the behavior system I'm in, then that's a sign that you're seeing a gap between what's written on paper and what's happening in the real classroom.
And if you're recognizing the potential problem of this, you're definitely on the right track.
International teaching as a whole asks us to unlearn a lot of what we thought was universal. It's not just about behavior, but about authority, belonging, and responsibility.
Yes, and context matters. Systems matter, and teachers deserve policy clarity, not guesswork. In our next episode, we're tackling the parent piece, expectations, culture, privilege, and why parents are such a powerful force in behavior systems abroad.
And then we'll finish the series with 2 Teacher Toolbox episodes, providing you practical strategies that actually help teachers and leaders in your international setting.
If this episode resonated with you, we'd really love to hear from you. What have you noticed about behavior policies in your context? Where do they help and where do they fall apart?
You can share your thoughts in the comments here or head over to connectedglobal.org, where you'll find more conversations like this, practical resources, and have the opportunity to join the Connected Global community.
When you join the community, you'll receive quarterly insights from us, reflections, tools, and updates designed to support you wherever you are in your international journey.
And as always, you can book a consultation with us through the website. Whether you want to talk about behavior systems, school culture, leadership, dynamics, or your next move abroad, we're just happy to unpack all of it with you.
Yes. Until next time, may your community expectations be clear.
Your leadership be well aligned.
Your classrooms feel steady and international.
Nice. Yeah, I like it tucked like that. Yeah. It's just...
It's there. Hello, hair.
Cute. Okay, wait. You are...
Too far?
Wait. No, not too... Yeah, okay. I was just I'm always going to take up a bit more of the screen, but that...
I could be looking at our policy paper. I think we did that before.